All right, well, thank you guys so much for being here. It's great to have this community building and growing, and it's inspiring to have all the examples that you guys are sharing and all the support that we can give to one another as we forge this path. And I'm super excited to introduce Coco Allen Gentry today, who is really a leader in this area. We're just meeting today, so I'm really excited to learn more about you, Coco. But Coco will be sharing with us a little bit about holistic health nurse coaching, holistic nurse coaching, and also soul science and spirit medicine, plant medicine, CBD, maybe some chakra cleansing. She has so much wisdom to share. We'll see how much time we have to fit all of this in, but anything that you feel is super alive to share with us, you have so much wisdom. So please feel free. Thank you so much for coming, Coco. It's great to have you here.
Thank
Welcome.
you. So, I have a website. I've been called Nurse Courtney for years. It's been my brand for years and years and years because I was a camp nurse at a music camp. My son was a musician. So I became Nurse Courtney because of spending 10 summers at a music camp. So I actually have a website, nursecourtney.com, but on IG, I'm Black Nurse Leader. And I actually did that because my colleagues were not recognizing that I am a leader. I'm actually the only Black nurse in the country with my credentials as a board certified holistic nurse and advanced health and wellness nurse coach. So that means I have a master's degree. And, so I have the board certification as an advanced holistic nurse, and then as a holistic nurse coach, which makes me a holistic nurse preceptor. And there's now, when I graduated, there were only 24 of us. So now there are probably, I think, 40 of us who are qualified to precept other holistic nurses. So just a little bit background about me. If you don't mind, in true Inca fashion, I'm going to just start us off with a little intention. And so, just to bring us in this space together. I'm living in Omaha, Nebraska, and it's wonderful that we can really come together in this space globally. And so let's just take a moment to call out our highest selves, our Body Davis highest self, and all of our spiritual guides, our angels, our ancestors, and crew. I'm going to ask them to get behind us and join us in this sacred space of well-being and knowledge sharing. Ask that we have that heart-to-heart connection, and that in this space, when we walk away, we will be changed. Thank you. So I always, after being a nurse coach now, since I got my certifications I graduated 2014, I got my certifications in 2015. You really learn how to tailor your practice, right? Now I'm a public health nurse, so I consider myself advanced board certified holistic public health nurse because I still deal with populations. And I actually started getting really involved in plant medicine with cannabis. And it was actually social activism, social justice. And, as nurses, we are all inherently sacred activists. It was nurses who were instrumental in getting the woman's vote. And believe it or not, who was it? Clara Barton. I mean, I'm sure some of you can remember the suffragists. I'm like losing it right now, but those nurses actually were going against nurses because the nursing profession did not want the vote as a whole. So the Iron Maidens that were out there advocating for the vote were not supported by nursing as a whole. So, they recognized that women having the vote was incredibly important to the health and well-being of women, in the United States and across the world. So, they suffered greatly. We have nurses who were Iron Maidens. They were locked up, they were force-fed, they were, all of the things for the vote. Whereas the whole, in general, profession of nursing was against it. So for all of you rebels out there, if you are advocating for a particular population, for a particular policy, in your communities, whatever. That is all the work of nursing, right? So, I want to be clear about that. And that's how I actually got involved in cannabis nursing. And I actually was with the founder of the American Cannabis Nursing Association, who was a male to female transgender, Ed Julia Glick. And when we were working with the association, nothing was happening. It was languishing. And this was before the first course and all the rest of it. But subsequently, through some issues, I no longer was working with that association, and I've been doing the work alone. And I really never liked the term cannabis nursing because it just felt, at the time, nurses were all about kind of just smoking and politicizing it and all the rest of it. But, I had been working on the legislation for many years because as a Black woman, my community, Black people are arrested 3.5 times more even today. And with the legalization, or cannabis arrests are actually up 60%. And Black people are being arrested 3.5 times more for small quantities, while you've got people making millions because they're businessmen. So, I got involved because of the social justice issue. And I've been working, I was working in California to get their original medical cannabis laws. I mean, I'm an OG. I've been doing this for many, many years. And so, it's been interesting. So with that, what I found is that as I have kind of been working with the whole trying to get a standard set for nursing practice, I really feel like it's been for me very difficult because of my color, and there's a lot of, in nursing, racism actually grew along the same lines, in nursing, and so it's still a very, a culture that is very dominated by a certain group think. And so if you're an outlier, like that's a lot of holistic nurses, a lot of people who are doing very different things. Sometimes it's hard to make the inroads, right? So then that's where I really had to use theory to justify everything I did. And so I got to the point where I was able to advocate for cannabis on a world stage by using integral theory. And it was actually Barbie Dossi who helped me because I had, I knew that integral theory and the theory of integral nursing was what I needed in order to bring cannabis to the public as a public health issue, because it is a population-based public health issue. At the time when I started working with it, there were no nurses that knew, how to take care of patients with cannabis. It wasn't widespread. There's still not a standardized education, it's all over the map. And so I really felt like, how can I, not only for myself, create a safe model of care, with the uneven legislation, it really does make a difference because you can have a patient in California and they can get on a plane with a half a pound of weed and it's legal, but they go to Kentucky and they can go to jail for life. So, there's so many different variations. I really had to figure it out. And so it was actually the theory of integral nursing that did that. And the wonderful thing about that theory of integral nursing is it actually helped me to teach other nurses how to take their practices, whatever practice that was. If you're a curandera, if you're a, I have a Filipino nurse that I worked with, and she went back to her culture and found out what the natural healers in the Philippines were, where she evolved, and that was really powerful for her. And so she was able to bring those practices forward. And we do this by using theory. So, that's where I want to tell a lot of mindful nurses that in order to make their practice sort of safe, ethical, and kind of following a format that makes it really bulletproof, right? Because yoga is an intervention. meditation is an intervention. All these things are an intervention. However, holistic nursing is a process, right? And so I try and get people to start with theory. And the whole thing about holistic nursing is the intention is healing the whole person, right? Recognizing that we're each, every being is a unitarian being consisting of body, mind, and spirit operating within their environment, right? Now, no part is greater than any part. Your physical body is no greater than your spiritual body. Your spiritual body is no greater than your mind thought. We are composed of multiple bodies. However, with the theory of integral nursing and integral theory, what I focus on is the 4 quadrants of being, right? Now, you guys who are Inca people will recognize this as the I, the subjective, what people believe about themselves, their thoughts, So right away, if you're working with someone, if they don't believe in yoga, if they don't think yoga is anything that they want to participate in, you can't offer them yoga. Now, can you? Right? So it's really important in the holistic process to understand what the subjective beliefs are of that person. And that is what's called the I quadrant. Then we have the it, which is the body, right? That's everything that can be measured. That's, blood pressure. That's what the appearance is. So that's the physical body. Then we have the it's, which is the person, their body, operating within culture and society. Now, in cannabis, this is exceedingly, exceedingly important because, like I said, in some states, it's completely legal, and in other states, it's not. So, for instance, I live in Nebraska, so I'm licensed in the E-Compact, so automatically I have 25 or 26 different licenses, which means I can easily telemed. I'm also licensed in New York and California, but every one of those states has a different law. So whoever I'm coaching, I have to make sure that whatever I'm coaching them with, if I say, okay, can you access THC, right? You can't access THC. In Nebraska, it's illegal, but in New York, it's now recreational. In California, it's recreational. So you have to understand where they are. And that's where that quadrant, that it's comes in, right? To really give you and address that part of that person within their environment. And then we have the we, which is the nurse and the client in conversation and collaboration, partnership, right? Working through, reflecting, all those things that we're doing, the interventions that we do, the meditations, the breathing. And think about this, any integral, or any of those things that we do, they're actually interventions, right? Like that's not the holistic part. That's just an intervention. And so, for instance, I'm a psychic nurse as well. And Dr. Christine Northrup discovered that I was psychic. And she told the world. And, I kind of blew up and I was doing a lot of listening to dead people. And Margaret Erickson from the American Holistic Nurse Coaching Credentialing Corporation, where you get your board certification, she actually calls that transgenerational nursing, right? Because what I'm doing is I'm literally working with that person who's dead, they're passed on, but we're healing not only them, but the family as well. Because, in my practice, I've discovered that people will pass away and their family will think, oh, mom was mean, or she did this to me. And then they don't know that mom was being abused, while she was dying, or something else was happening, or she was being manipulated. So, it's really wonderful to kind of, to help people heal from beyond the grave and to help families, really get through the grieving and all of that. And the one thing that being a psychic nurse has really taught me is that everyone has their own soul contract, right? Like everyone is here to fulfill their own life story. We don't have anything to do with it, except for the fact that we might be, collaborating with them. And now they say, a lot of that is not even random, right? Like these rendezvous are all sort of predestined in some way for whatever reason. And so with the holistic process, we have a chance to really capture, using the 4 quadrants of experience, to really capture, whether or not that person believes in psychism, whether they are psychic, whether, whatever they believe it, right? So be that psychism, be it, any other kind of therapeutic intervention, using that process to go through the holistic nursing process really keeps us on track. And that's where the theory really helps, right? So, I mean, you can take anything you do, and as long as you can frame it in this, in this process, right? Then, and that framing allows you to communicate the work you do. It guides the work that you do. It allows you to repeat the work that you do, right? So, that's something I really wanted to pass along to you. And then I wanted you all as nurses and to understand that the primary intervention of a nurse is ourselves, okay? We are instruments of healing. So simply the presence of a nurse means that we are in training healing. So this is where nurses have to really understand that the fix, number one, nobody's broken. So I tell anybody, I'm not here to fix you because you're not broken. There is no one broken, right? Thank you. Everyone is here having their own spiritual experience, and it's all part of it, okay? And so we don't need to fix because no one's broken. But what we do need to do is channel universal energy. And we do that by entraining ourselves through self-reflection, self-care, right? Looking at what we're seeing in our environment and what's being reflected back to us tells us a lot about what's going on within us, right? And so it's really important as part of the holistic process. And this is actually, it is a standard of holistic nursing that we reflect, that we take the time to look within, because everything starts within and then it moves without, right? So as above, so below, within, without. And that's just how Jesus healed. He healed himself first. And then he was, then that healing was passed on. So whenever someone comes to me for whatever, I have to first, think about maybe how I had processed whatever it is that they're working with, and not in a selfish, this is about me, but thinking about that process of how does this feel to be in this space, right? And what is that space indicating, and all the rest of it, right? And by being able to reflect, it really, it's incredibly important. And it's how we keep our instrument, our bodies, our spirit, our soul, how we keep tuned. And what we are actually doing is in training to the Schumann resonance of the earth. It's the heartbeat of the earth. And that Schumann resonance was around 7.85 or 58 megahertz, but it's increased. But the Schumann resonance is actually what heart math measures, like it's all the, the heartbeats together. And it's developed from the ionosphere. It's the charges that hit the earth. And so the earth is surrounded by this certain charge, and we all vibrate to that charge at different hertz. And so when we are at the Schumann resonance, we are sort of at ground, right? And by being able to channel, the resonance of well-being as instruments, then we are in training well-being, right? So that's like walking into the room and people just feel better, right? Patients feel better because we just walked into the room. So remember that you're instruments of healing. We utilize 6 ways of knowing in holistic nursing. One of the ways of knowing is intuitive knowing. So this is really important if you have, if you feel like your intuitive knowing is strong enough that you can bring that to your practice, then that's a really important part of your practice, right? And I can sit with a person. I mean, and I'm clairaudient, so it's pretty easy for me because I just, if there's dead people around them, I hear. If there are angels around them, I hear. And usually what happens is whatever archetypes the other person is working with will show up for me, right? So, Michael will show up, the archangel, if someone is really into Michael. These are just energy forms, they're narratives, they are archetypes that are out in the environment, they're in the field, and we are just simply channeling them. So I just want to emphasize that intuition is actually a part of nursing knowledge and holistic nursing knowing. So, practice your intuition, like really listen, because the more you trust the universe, the more the universe will entrust with you, which means you can get a tremendous amount of information. So we have that personal and intuitive knowing. We have scientific and empirical knowing. We have social political knowing, ethical knowing, aesthetic knowing. And one of my favorites is unknowing, not knowing. There's this space where you just don't know, and you don't have to know, right? If someone is going to die, we don't know when they're going to die, but you're just sitting vigil, right? You're there. You're like, I don't know. But so I want you all to try as much as you can to be comfortable in that space of unknowing, right? We don't have to have all the answers. We can just use that space of unknowing to have pauses, that, meaningful pauses, to just support the other person with deep listening, or to just say, I don't know what your experience is like, but I am here to just be a witness and hold space for it, right? And in that unknowing, holding sacred space is critical, right? And that's what we do every time we're interfacing with someone, is we're holding sacred space for them, right? And M. Scott Peck says, giving someone's attention by bracketing your thoughts, holding your questions, right? Just listening is a pure act of love. So anytime we can actually just listen, we are literally living and acting with love. Okay, so that's that kind of holistic process, and how to sort of frame your practice, right? Using the 4 quadrants of experience, of integral being. And so I encourage everyone to look at that theory of integral nursing and think about the integral process, because as you're using whatever interventions you're using, yoga, meditation, laugh therapy, whatever, those are all interventions that move within, as long as you're dealing with the person from the, their subjective, the I, the body, the society, and social, political, and, kind of the we, you are hitting all their quadrants of experience. And that's how you guide holistic practice, right? And that's actually a multidimensional, that's the way you would do your multidimensional assessments as well. Now, speaking of assessments, I have what's called that's why I call it spirit science and plant medicine, is because actually, as I got into cannabis, I really, I downloaded this theory, and I presented my theory at 2 international, I presented my work at 4 international conferences. I presented in Iceland and Canada, and at the Institute of Cannabis Research twice with Dr. Raphael Meshulam. And, I was the only nurse amongst all these scientists, and I was the only person to present sort of spiritual, metaphysical aspects in cannabis. And, I found the connection between the endocannabinoid system, and our bodies. We are actually human biocrystals. So every cell in our body, our cell membrane is actually a liquid crystal. Our bones are crystals array, our muscles are arrays of crystals. So we are basically human biocrystals. And, every body part has a different frequency. And that's where chakras come in, because chakras are literally the ganglia at each level within the spine that innervate all the organs. So in the root chakra, that ganglia takes care of your intestines and some of your your sex organs and bowels. The second chakra is like kidney and all that. If I used to be a trauma operating room nurse, and if patient has quada equinus, which is a collapsing spine, you will get loss of kidney function on down the line as the spine collapses. So it's a true medical emergency. But what they're collapsing on is actually that basal ganglia, which is really where the chakra exists, because that basal ganglia of nerves actually secretes hormones, all of those things that impact our emotions. And that is where the energy that we get, universal energy, kind of comes in and gets stepped down. Right. So with chakra, I call it chakraful nursing. That's my book, Chakraful Nursing. What I have learned is if you can look at, or if you can think about the chakra level that things are manifesting on for clients, then you automatically have a really good idea of what they're dealing with. So I can do this automatically. Anybody, for instance, breast cancer is all about the heart, right? Because that's heart chakra. There is not a single woman I know with breast cancer that does not nurture the entire world, but leaves very little for herself. So think about all the breast cancer people, they are the ultimate nurturers, right? They give so much that they leave little for themselves. And so they're like nursing the world, but they're not nursing themselves. So that process of breast cancer, you get a crystallization there. It's saying, hey, you've got to pay attention to yourself now. This is about you, right? With heart disease, high blood pressure, there's sort of a resistance, pain, neck. It's like I always ask is who's being a pain in the neck? So a neck pain is either someone being a pain in the neck or a person being inflexible in their position. Okay. And so if somebody says, oh, my neck is really, I'm always like, okay, well, are you being inflexible, or is somebody being a pain in your neck, or is there something going on? You can always kind of tell, right? Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I have every Hashimoto's patients I've dealt with, and I deal a lot with Hashimoto's because I've discovered that 100 milligrams of CBD a day, at the minimum, 100 milligrams of CBD will dramatically change the symptoms of Hashimoto's. It will dramatically change. Now, with Hashimoto's, the throat is actually connected to the testicles and the vagina. So, sometimes people will have, like I have a man with Hashimoto's, and he's having this chronic rash or thinning on his balls. And, it's interesting because those chakras are connected in that way as well. But I know with Hashimoto's that it's the throat chakra. So there is a truth that they're either telling themselves something that is not truthful, or they're living in a way that is not in alignment with their truth. So you can, if you have Hashimoto's patients, there's some kind of misalignment there, right? They're really not living their true voice, or not truly, able to truly be themselves in some way. Really interesting. With, and then I can do this thing with sides. So if someone says, okay, my right side, I've got my right knee. Well, knees are about being able to move forward in life. Right side is the masculine side. So that's what we're putting out to the world. The left side is our feminine side, and that's the channel that we bring things into the world. So say someone is having a knee problem, if it's their left knee and it's causing them inability to move forward, it is probably because they are taking in something that is causing them to, have some hesitancy about life. There's something going on. If it's their right knee, it probably means they are not putting out the work that needs to be done or something, not, literally. And so you can think about laterality in, when you have your clients, whatever side is happening, just basically you can kind of generally say, you're either, it's what you're taking in or what you're putting out. And so that's one of the coaching questions that I have for people. I have them think about that. What is it that you're taking in that you really might not be good for you? And if they have like shoulder pains, shoulder is heart as well, but shoulder is all about shouldering the burdens of the world. So you see a lot of shoulder pain in males who have a lot of responsibility without a lot of backup, or, women. I mean, but you think about shoulders, and that really is a really common problem. When people feel like they're so burdened, then they might even fall and break their arm and have, it's like, it's amazing how, the universe kind of will trigger things, because by the time it shows up in our physical body, it is already well established in, spiritually, in our etheric template and all the rest of it. And it could be a problem that has been going on for a long time, but it is not until it's manifested in its physical form that we recognize it, right? So, a lot of what I do is helping people recognize what they're putting in or putting out. And you can do that. It doesn't take long at all. If somebody says, oh, my hips, I'm like, okay, well, hips are about, the foundation of your life and stability. Where are you feeling unstable? I just had this huge celiac outbreak, and for the last 2 weeks, I have been miserable. And I know for a fact that my brother was killed, and it was the anniversary of his death, and he was a lot of security for me. And then something else happened that really took some security out from under me. And so then somehow I was like, I opened myself up to, I was vulnerable, and I took in something. I took in gluten-free buckwheat. It was like, okay, well, I'm going to take a try, but I wanted something to comfort me. And that comfort really came out in my skin, and it was not comforting, but it really made me aware of what I'm dealing with. Like, I had to sit down and go, okay, what's this about? So, I encourage you all, when you get a pain, and it's funny, I am so sensitive now. I could be walking down the street and I'll take in a thought that is no good for me, and immediately my knee will give out from under me. And I'm like, okay, I know I have to change. So, be mindful of what you're thinking and see how that impacts your body, your health, your whatever, and like I tell everyone, the scripts that we tell ourselves are so important, right? I mean, we know that, I'm sorry, somebody, there is, I don't know how to turn off the notifications, and but the scripts that we tell ourselves are so important. So really be mindful of the scripts that you're telling yourself, because those scripts are also a prophecy, right? What you're telling yourself will show up in your environment. Okay. So I know when I get angry people, I'm pissed. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what I'm angry about, but I better figure it out, right? Because, I'm angry. But I also know that, okay, if I'm responsible, I can shift that. I can change that channel right away, and I can do something else and put myself on a different frequency, right? And call some other things in. So then that's where, the reprogramming is really important, being able to unlearn things. And, and I help people do that too, because it's really important. Our bodies are computers. We just literally wire the same. If we think the same thoughts over and over and over again, we're wiring those networks over and over again. It's called Hebbian learning. So in order to unhook those networks, you literally have to think new thoughts. So if your thought is, oh, I'm no good at this, you can't think that thought. You have to think a different thought every time you're in that situation. And that's where, the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza has been invaluable in my practice in helping me, right, change that. And so I think it's an important tool for nurses to be able to understand in order to help other people and to help ourselves, because we have scripts. My theory is that we are human biocrystals governed. Literally, the endocannabinoid system is the master regulator of every system in our body. It manages everything, including implantation of the embryo, embryonic development, and when you have to learn how to walk again after an accident, that's your endocannabinoid system. So the endocannabinoid system, is responsible for neurogenesis of new cells. It is responsible for a whole structure of our body, everything. Regulation of metabolism, hot or cold eating, all of that, pain, stress, it's part of the HPA stress axis. When we get stress, anandamide, which is the molecule of bliss, is an equivalent to THC, is pumped out in volume. And then we have 2-AG, which is the workhorse, which is the retrograde signaler that stops the pain. So if you ever, cut yourself or hurt yourself while you're in an emergency, you don't even feel that, that's because of the endocannabinoid system. So with that endocannabinoid system, we have receptors on every cell in our body, CB1 and CB2 receptors. And those receptors are a 7-serpentine transmembrane receptor. So it goes through the cell wall 7 times, right? In and out 7 times. And then it goes through the cell. It connects to every organelle in the cell. And then it goes out the cell 7 times. Each one of those folds connects to the planetary energy, right? Each one of those folds, because there's a 7, we live in a septenary universe. So each one of those folds is receiving the morphinogenic fields. And this is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. We know that there are habits in the universe that tell birds to fly south, tell seeds when to pop, embryos when to pop. Everything is based on these habits in the universe. They're called morphinogenic fields, right? And even our own habits, epigenetically, we are all, or many of us, especially if you're from Switzerland, Germany, or whatever, those on our DNA, we are coded for the witch hunt gene on the DNA, right? Because natural healers, AKA witches, were hunted for over 500 years and killed. So that we lost a tremendous amount of knowledge and nursing knowledge, because nurses comes from witches, right? That's sort of the stem of that. So for 500 years, that, women were hunted. And Germanic, Switzerland, I lived in a town in Würzburg, Germany, where they killed 985 women in 1 year. So can you imagine 3 women burning at the stake every day of your life in the city center, right? And so many of the behaviors that we see today in women come from the fact that they are trying to protect themselves from being burned at the stake. Okay. And so that is actually encoded in us. This is something that we have to overcome. I am an archetype. I am Irish. I have a rare form of celiac because I am the great-great-granddaughter of an Irish slaveholder, and I am Black. Both of those archetypes are archetypes of slavery, right? The Irish were enslaved by the Vikings years ago. So if you go to, Iceland, you'll see lots of Irish pubs because the Irish were slaves. So that's an archetype of slavery. Celiac is an autoimmune disease is a result of the Irish potato famine, right? So when my great Irish slaveholding granddaddy came here, he bought the potato famine gene with him. So I have a rare form of celiac, and many people in my family have autoimmune disease because we have 70% Irish genes, right? So this is something epigenetically, and there's a book called like biogenealogy, understanding the psychic basis of disease. If you look at a lot of that, these are encoded in our cells, in our DNA, because they were traumas that happened in the past. So our DNA encodes them in order to be able to use that information in the future. So every trauma that we go through, every scare that we have encodes on our DNA, and then it is the environment that we live in that brings it out, right? And so these are all part of the morphinogenic fields that we encounter. And this is what the endocannabinoid system is responding to via this one little connector called an integrin. And an integrin is another 7 transmembrane protein that connects the extracellular matrix to the intracellular matrix. So we're literally connected to the stars, the cosmos, all the rest of it, and feeling the vibrations of that and moving it intracellularly based on, and then the endocannabinoid system responds. It tells the cell to move, it tells us to adapt, it tells us to do whatever. And so it is critical that we have good endocannabinoid tone. And endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome is one now being attributed as one of the leading causes of somatoform diseases like PTSD, fibromyalgia, things that really you can't put a finger on them. Well, they're really being linked now to endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. And the reason why we are deficient in endocannabinoids is because we have been legally separated from the plant for more than 80 years. Okay. So we have this one plant that we have receptors in the body that govern everything. And, it's what, 10,000 years they've discovered it. It's been used in all the Chinese texts. Dioscorides, who was Emperor Nero's herbalist, recorded it in his text in ancient Mesopotamia. The word cannabis comes from ancient Mesopotamia. It means canna is related to cane and bis too. So it is a very old plant, right? And so we have been separated from it. And these components, we have our own endocannabinoids. We have anandamide, which is the equivalent of THC. It makes you buzzed, it makes you bliss. The way to activate anandamide is yoga position number 1, smiling, right? Everybody smile, you're anandamide. That is one of the easiest ways to activate anandamide. You can activate it through, actually, chiropractic does it. That's what acupuncture does. Exercise. It is not endorphins that are released during exercise. It is endocannabinoids that are released during exercise that actually gives you the runner's high, right? If you take a long hot bath, you will activate your endocannabinoid system. So I take a bath, frequently. I mean, takes about an hour for me. And the hotter the bath you can get in, the faster, because what you do is the endocannabinoid system is a thermoregulator. So as soon as you get in that hot bath, it shuts down, the heat signals coming in. It's saying, oh, it's hot, you got to do something, right? So it activates. So, it starts acting right away, but after about 30 minutes, you get your, it takes me 30 or 40, but you know how you get out of the bath and you feel blissed? That's the endocannabinoid system. Simple, right? So, you can actually exploit the endocannabinoid system and work on your own endocannabinoid deficiency by taking hot baths, right? By smiling, by thinking good thoughts, and by using hemp oil in the grocery store, right? The stuff that you just get in the refrigerator in the grocery store. That hemp oil is cold pressed hemp. It has CBD in it. It has all the terpenes, a full spectrum everything. It's got everything the plant can offer to you, right? It also has GLA and ELA. It is the most perfect fatty acid omega-369 that we could have. And when you take hemp oil, you are actually directly feeding your cell membranes, because endocannabinoids are pulled off the phospholipid bilayer membrane of your body. Okay. Now, here's something else that was really interesting. Our cannabis cannabis represents 4 isoprene units. Now, isoprene are these basic building block molecules in our body. CoQ10 is 10 isoprene units. Sex hormones are 7 isoprene units. The pears, the smell of pear and smelly feet, are 2 isoprene units. So we're, isoprene is what builds, proteins, steroid hormones, all of those things are literally built from your endocannabinoid system. So by just simply taking in hemp oil from the grocery store, right? Nothing special, just hemp oil. You're feeding directly into your endocannabinoid system and directly into your metabolism. And, we need flexible cell membranes in order to be able to respond to the signals coming in around us. So, I think about cell membrane flexibility as so important, because that makes you, more sensitive to your environment. If you, for me as a psychic, I know that I need water, and I need to make sure that I don't dry out, right? Because you want to keep your cells flexible. So with that, with the endocannabinoid system and us responding to the morphinogenic fields, we knowing that this is happening, that's where astrology can really help for us to understand what's sort of happening in a broad sense. And so I do a little bit of astrology to help people get trends. I use the birth chart as a blueprint for my clients. I do what's called a transpersonal assessment. Before I even see a person, you can take their birth date, their location, and all that information. You can get their astrology chart and see what kind of energies are operating in their lives. If they have Mercury is the planet of communication. If they are a fire Mercury, that tends to be intuitive. If they're a water Mercury, that means that person feels their communication. They're more of a feeling based. If they're an earth-based communicator, Mercury and Virgo or Taurus, that means their communication style is always going to be practical and grounded, right? If you're kind of a water, air-based, it's going to be a lot more sort of thoughtful and thought-based, right? So you can look at that chart and tell how a person communicates. You can tell what they value by their Venus. You can tell what comforts them by their moon. You can tell what their soul mission is by their ascendant. And you can tell the sun is sort of the vehicle of the personality that says, okay, this is how we're going to get it done in this life, right? So I do a transpersonal assessment. I look at those things so I know what their communication style is. I'm a fire person. I have a fire Mercury and 5 planets in Leo. So if I'm with someone who's a water-based, a Mercury communicator, their Mercury is in water, it's going to be harder for me to communicate with them. So I have to bring it down to a feeling level, right? I can go, you feel me? I say a lot more, you feel me, right? So that can really help me understand that client. You can also look at their numerology, and you can look at, from those planets, I do sort of a chakra astrology where you can plot what chakras are influenced by the astrology based on those planets. So that helps me too, right? Because I know, if they're, for instance, Jupiter is our sacral chakra. So where that Jupiter is can tell you a lot about how that person is emoting, because our sacral chakra is our emotional body, right? And so, um, consider that the transpersonal assessment as something that's, oh, and I know I'm getting, but, as something that you can do before you can even see a person. You can learn a lot about them energetically, right? And so that's where spirit science and plant medicine comes in for me, because I felt like cannabis nursing is too limited. We have so many plants that we live with and we work with. Food sustainability and food sovereignty is so important, and it's a sacred activity for nurses to make sure that people understand how to have their own food sovereignty, right? That means if it's just planting one kale in a pot so you can have something green, right? Then do that, right? And then understanding that everything, mushrooms, there are so many different substances now that it has gotten more, that impacts the endocannabinoid system and that governs it and works with it, that, that's where my plant medicine comes in. So that's why I've gone back and sort of coined what Rudolf Steiner first coined as spiritual scientists, but I am creating a whole new paradigm of nursing called spiritual science and plant medicine. So for the future. How's that? Okay. There was one little thing I wanted to leave you with, because I forgot this. I want everyone to know that CBD works in 4 different ways. This is so critical, okay, for every nurse to know this. CBD works, it is one of the most powerful antioxidants. It's 1,000 times more powerful than vitamin C. And it works within the mitochondria to scavenge, reactive oxygen species within the mitochondria. So for diabetics, it's critical because they are burning sugar within the mitochondria. And when you burn sugar in the pan, it gets that Meyer-Dink effect. That's what happens in the blood vessels. So for diabetics on pure CBD, they can really help to reduce the amount of damage by, using CBD to protect their blood vessels, right? So powerful antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. It actually shuts down microglial cell activation. So if somebody's, inflamed, CBD, you can use it topically, whatever, it will stop inflammation. And the more you use, the better at arresting inflammation. It is also directly an agonist to serotonin receptors. So for the drugs, Buspar, Paxil, Wellbutrin, that all work on on inhibiting the breakdown of serotonin, CBD directly agonizes serotonin receptors. So it directly impacts mood, behavior, anxiety. And then the 4th thing is analgesia. It prevents the breakdown of anandamide, which is our own internal THC. And that's why it helps with pain. And this is where chocolate helps. Chocolate prevents the breakdown of anandamide. It is not an endocannabinoid. It just stops the transport of anandamide into the cell by fatty acid hydrolase and breakdown. So chocolate, that's why it makes you happy, because it just stops anandamide from being broken down. So that was it. That was the main point I wanted to leave you with, was some CBD information, because, I have found that, I'm treating treatment resistant conditions. I treat people with stroke. I help people with stroke. Right after a stroke, it's super important to get on CBD. I have somebody who had a stroke and he got on CBD and he was not even taking what I recommended. And within a year, he doesn't even use diabetic meds either. So not only was everything better, and then I'm going to encourage every nurse out there to start practicing making your own medicine. No matter what that is, you can use rosemary oil. You can use rosemary and make rosemary oil, and that's terpene. That's a cannabinoid. That will actually, you can put it on muscles. It's a muscle relaxant. Oil of oregano is one of the most powerful antimicrobials out there. You can make that in your kitchen, and I teach people on Instagram all the time. make your own medicines, right? And as you have your clients, start helping them make their own medicines, because when you make your own medicines, you're literally going back to that morphinogenic field of the natural healers that we are, the witches. Now, even early nursing, Virginia Henderson has formulas for herbs in her, her early nursing tomes. But we have been bred out of making our own things. So I just want to include that, and I have a healing garden. Everything in my front yard can be used for medicine. And so, I want to encourage you all to practice your witchcraft, to go back to being those natural healers, to embrace whatever traditions that you have in your culture. If you're Latin, it's curanderas. If you're Filipino, I think it's baton. If you're, Chinese, TCM, Asian, like every culture has their healing practices. Channel those, be your own, like establish your own thing by channeling your history, your wisdom, and bring that out to the world. We all need you. Okay, I'm complete.
Oh, thank you so much, Coco. Wow, what an honor to have you here, such a leader and a wise teacher and mentor for all of us. I'm so touched. I was almost in tears through several times of your sharing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's beautiful to meet you and to have you share with us. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you could go on for hours more, and I would love to listen to you for hours more. We'll just take a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions that you want to ask before we close. Please feel free.
And if anybody, you feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm Black Nurse Leader. If you have questions, too, maybe.
Yeah.
What did Marcella say?
Marcella says, thank you so much. Patty says, thank you. Everyone's just saying, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. There you go. From Brazil, from wherever you are, use your own healing practices, right? Bring that out to the world, because we really need everyone to be themselves. Don't be anybody else. Be yourself, and be it bold and bad and beautiful. Okay.
And activate, Celia.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
That was great, Coco. That was like extra holistic, like to another level. Like that was wonderful. Thank you. It's really interesting.
Thank you, Claudia. And I just want to recognize you this month for Asian American, Pacific Islander Week, and all of you, my sisters, and, and just say my heart is with you all for what's happening in the community. And so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay. All right. So, I'm trying to get my courses out. I'm establishing a holistic foundations course, and I have a couple other things that are coming up. And so stay tuned. I'm working hard. It's hard to do it by yourself, but, don't be discouraged if you're by yourselves. Collaborations don't come so easy. So if you have those, that's great too. But I look forward to you. And please, you all go out and just do beautiful things, because the world really needs you as yourself and not an imitation of anyone else, right? Okay.
Thank you. What an inspiration. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Claudia, do you want to just sign us off and let us know about what's happening tomorrow before we close? We'll share that. Sorry, Michaela. We'll share. It's Black Nurse Leader as your Instagram, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll also post the recording on Instagram. So if you want to share it with your friends.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining. That was really very interesting and inspiring. Tomorrow we have a session on essential oils from Marilyn Delete. She's from doTERRA essential oils, like very high quality oils that you can use internally in all different ways. If you signed up earlier, you could register to get some oils, or if not, you can connect with her during the session and learn all about it, about different oils. So feel free to join us same time and same place.
Yeah, wonderful. Oh, thank you all for having me. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. It was so nice to share.
Thank you for sharing. Thanks everyone for
Okay.
coming. Have a good day. Good evening.
Okay.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.